Welcome to the Diversity Connector podcast, where we explore the rich tapestry of human experiences. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country on which we meet today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, past, present, and emerging, and together as we dive into conversations that bridge cultures, challenge stereotypes, and celebrate the unique perspectives each of us brings to the table. Each episode is a journey through stories and insights from a kaleidoscope of voices, each sharing their colorful narrative. Whether you're at home, on the go, or just anywhere in between, you're now part of a community that values understanding, inclusivity, and the beauty of diversity. So plug in your headphones, get comfortable, and let's connect through the power of our shared stories. Welcome, and thank you for joining us on the Diversity Connector podcast. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Diversity Connector. This is Gertrude Mache here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And as you know, the Diversity Connector is bringing you voices from people from all over the world to energize, inspire you, and share inspiration around diversity. So I want to welcome our next guest. Welcome to our tribe. Please tell everybody your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hi, Gertrude. Thank you so much for having me. I'm Shannon Smith. I'm 44 years old, and I'm based in Morgantown, West Virginia, in the United States. My story is full of twists and turns and so many surprises along the way to get me to where I am today, and I'm happy to share that with everyone. And my message always is going to be how we can empower and advocate for women. And I think that's really what I would like to get everyone to understand as we end today. Originally, I was born and raised in South Carolina in the United States. I grew up in a blue-collar, low-income household. Education, however, was a priority for my parents to push onto me. I'm a first-generation college student. From there, I went on to law school, graduated with high honors and with Order of the Barristers, which is a high-achieving advocacy recognition. I'm currently an equity member in my law firm, which has 3 offices around our state. I'm also president-elect of the West Virginia State Bar, which is the mandatory bar organization and administration for all practitioners, practicing lawyers in the state of West Virginia. I will become president on April 7th of 2024 and will serve in that role for 1 year. And I'm very, very excited about moving forward in that role and having a voice to give to not only to all of the lawyers in the state of West Virginia, but to assist those for whom the lawyers help, right? Well, for the residents and citizens of West Virginia. It's a very small state, but we're a very tight-knit state. Everyone from West Virginia is very proud to be from West Virginia. And although, like I said earlier, I originally grew up in South Carolina, I've been in West Virginia for more than half of my life now. And so I definitely consider myself a West Virginian at heart. And so I'm thrilled to be here. I'm going to back up a little bit with that information and kind of go back to a little bit of the beginnings where, like I said, education was pushed on me by my parents, neither of whom graduated or attended college. They were blue-collar workers, but they saw the value in education and getting out from penny pinching and literally looking through couch cushions for change and making something of myself. And hard work was always stressed upon me. And I've been working in a job since I was 11 years old, nonstop. Of course, it was for cash, until I was old enough to actually get a job. And honestly, when I was 14 years old, I lied about my age to get my first W-2 paying job. I said I was 15 so that I could get hired somewhere, because I always needed to have that extra income if I wanted anything that wasn't torn or ripped or hand-me-downs. And so I've always known the value of hard work and the value of advocating for myself to get what I needed to get. And that was always really important in my life and to my parents. While I was in high school, the act of giving back was always really stressed upon me. Coming from very little, you tend to value the things that people don't have as well as what people have. And in that regard, I would, volunteer at homeless shelters. I would volunteer for Habitat for Humanity, anything that I could to give back, because it just felt, in a sense, like that's what I was supposed to do. And that's what everyone should be doing, is giving back in some way. And it became even more evident in high school at the age of, when I was 16, my father got diagnosed with initially throat cancer. He went through a series of treatments, and unfortunately it metastasized to his lungs, and he died of lung cancer when I was 17 years old. In fact, it's currently December 27th. I know December 28th for Gertrude, but December 27th for me in the US. And it was 27 years ago yesterday that we lost him to lung cancer. And during his very brief survival from the time of diagnosis to the time of death, I went hard in volunteering with the American Cancer Society and doing anything that I could. And at the time, that meant, being a teenager, it meant anything that I could do. So I would volunteer at the local hospital and providing blankets and other just general material goods to cancer patients. It meant assisting in fundraisers where we would sell Christmas cards made by children cancer patients that would raise funds for the specific cancer hospital. It meant participating in Relay for Life, which was an annual fundraising event, and really kind of going head on with that. I continued that advocacy through college and then through law school. And during all of that time, my mom also had been diagnosed with cancer. She luckily had survived, and she's still with us today. She's had breast cancer and ovarian cancer. And I continued to work with the American Cancer Society, with fundraisers and doing anything I could to try to get the prevention and the treatment, and encouraging folks to get out there and, get those tests done. But it became even more evident for me that there was a need for self-advocacy and advocacy for other women a little more than a year ago, when I was diagnosed with breast cancer myself. And it only happened because I had to advocate for myself to get early treatments because of my family history with cancer. And I was able to get more regular preventative tests, which caught it early enough to where I was able to have surgery and be okay in the end. Now, I say that in a fairly simple way, but I had a bilateral mastectomy, and it took 2 surgeries to kind of get back to where I am today. And then 6 months ago, I was diagnosed with ovarian cancer, and that took a heck of a lot more of self-advocacy. In between the period of my mastectomy and actually finding the ovarian cancer, I had been very ill, and I had been gaining weight in a way that wasn't natural for me, but I was continuing to be told that it was natural. I was just gaining weight. It was nothing. It was all related to the mastectomy, nothing to be worried about. And finally, I got ill enough to where or angry enough, or both, to where someone actually believed me. And we did the appropriate tests and found out that I had a giant mass growing on my ovary, and it was overtaking my abdomen. And I had an emergency hysterectomy, oophorectomy, mass removal, some exploratory surgery, and a whole lot of other things to determine that it was ovarian cancer. They did get it all. And then that led me to really reflect on how just regular women get medical issues dismissed or missed regularly. I, as a trained lawyer, I've been practicing for 17-ish years, and I'm trained to advocate for other people. And I often do it well, maybe not all the time, but what I realized during my own experience is that self-advocacy was something that was lacking with me, even though I advocate for others all of the time. I have a 12-year-old son. I advocate for him regularly. He has special needs, and I've been very good with advocating for him. I'm very good at advocating for my clients, but I realized I was not so great with advocating for myself. And that flipped a bit of a switch in me to realize that there are so many women's issues that we just don't talk about enough. And it's really important that we do. It's important that we talk about getting those mammograms done, getting those pap smears done, asking the doctor for more testing, asking for a female doctor if that's your choice for gynecologic or other female related issue. Making sure you're asking the right questions going in, and really taking one step back and making sure you're asking the right question to even get the appointment in the first place. And all of these things can be accomplished by women, especially those women over the age of 50. Unfortunately, me being, I was 43 during the diagnosis of both of my cancers. I'm 44 now. 3 surgeries in the past year. I'm happy to say I've survived and I've come out stronger. And with this, I know that I need to help other women realize that it's okay to be told no by a doctor and then to go right back in and say, but that's not okay, right? So if someone, a medical professional, tells you, well, it's probably nothing, why don't we wait? But your gut instinct is to say, no, I'm not okay with waiting, then say that. And just that one simple sentence of, no, I'd rather do something else, I'm finding that it's much more difficult for women to do than men. And I'm not sure why. Maybe it's the passiveness of our history and not speaking out, or somehow coming off as angry in doing so. But having that advocacy for yourself is so important, because it can get certain diagnoses for you sooner than later. It can help treat you sooner than later. It can help you stay alive, frankly. And I'm grateful for having my own switch flipped during my own advocacy issues, to know that had I not pushed it a little bit more, I may not be here today. And I'm grateful for that. And so moving forward in my role as a leader in West Virginia, and as a leader among lawyers here in West Virginia, it's important that we push each other to advocate for yourself and for those around you who may not be understanding that they should be advocating. So for your moms, your grandmoms, your sisters, your cousins, your best friends, your neighbor, your colleague, whomever that may be, advising them to make those appointments, advising to go with them, because we need women and we need women to survive. And we can't do that if we're not appropriately advocating for ourselves. With that, and with my role at the state bar, and with my experience now with the West Virginia University Cancer Institute, who has taken amazing care of me, I'm going to be working on a project called Lawyers for Lucas. Lucas is a mobile lung cancer screening unit that is only a couple of years old in West Virginia and travels to 42 of the most rural counties here in West Virginia and provides necessary lung cancer screening that otherwise wouldn't be happening. West Virginia has the second highest rate of mortality when it comes to lung cancer than any other state in the United States. And making sure we help those who can't always help themselves, and advocating is so, so important. West Virginians also, and many other states have this too, have a mammography mobile unit. West Virginians is called Bonnie's Bus, also through the WVU Cancer Institute, and provides mammograms all around the state to women who can't otherwise get them, or who haven't otherwise had them for insurance or other issues that are preventing them from getting them. and making sure we stay on top of our own health and our own advocacy is so very important. And I really encourage everyone that if you haven't made those appointments yet, schedule them in the new year. This is a great downtime for a lot of businesses and for a lot of people to sit down and look at your calendar and say, when do I need to get these appointments scheduled? And do it now. And if you're scared to go, ask someone to go with you. If you're local to me, I will go with you. I'll drive with you. I will sit silently with you. I'll talk to you. I'll put on a silly fun, song and dance for you, whatever it needs to get you to go to these appointments and take care of yourself and make sure that we're taking care of each other, because we need strong women. We need to survive. We need to continue. And certainly our children need us to do that as well. So generally, I guess that's my story through today.
Absolutely wonderful, Shannon. Thank you so much for coming online today and sharing your story with us. It's just such an inspiration to see where you're from and where you are now. It's incredible.
Yes,
so
thank you. Happy to be alive.
So as a seasoned attorney in defense litigation and energy law, how do you see diversity evolve in these fields over the years?
Unfortunately, I don't. Energy law, well, the practice of law as a whole is still very much a white man's game. And even women, it's a hard role to break into. Although, I'll say my law school class from 17 or 18 years ago, we had close to 50-50 in women and men ratio. But what has happened, a lot of women are moving out of our state. Unfortunately, West Virginia continues to have very low diverse population and a very low diverse population in the practice of law, and especially in the energy field. And, I'm very lucky to where my law firm is predominantly men. However, my actual local office where I work, we have a larger women percentage. So we have 9 attorneys, I think, in this office, and 5 of us are women. So we're good there, but unfortunately it's a problem. And it's a problem that I'm hoping that as president of the West Virginia State Bar, when I do take that reign, that's one thing that we're really going to look into is how do we not only recruit diversity into the state, into our practice, the practice of law, but how do we keep them here once we get them here? Because it is a problem.
Yeah. So what are some of the unique challenges and opportunities that you've encountered as a woman in a male-dominated field of energy law, for example?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of the same misogyny that has kind of occurred over time. I mean, I've been mistaken for a court reporter more times than I can count. I've been, mistaken for the secretary or the receptionist. One male lawyer years ago, was early in practice, kept calling me girl. He refused to use my name and would just call me girl repeatedly. For the longest time, there was a judge in our state who, although it wasn't a written rule, it was a known rule that women still needed to wear dresses or skirts to court rather than a nice pantsuit, which I prefer. And it's pretty regular. I mean, we get interrupted regularly. It's very difficult to have conversations often. I very much repeat what I saw Kamala Harris do a few years ago during one of her debates, which is, she very calmly and very quietly says, "I'm still speaking." And I've used that a number of times where I do it. And I also do it to my child. It almost seems a little maternalistic at times where I have to say, "I'm still speaking." And it hits home sometimes because most of the time it's not known. Men don't know that they're doing it. I don't know that it's always intentional. It's just because it's been a male-dominated practice as a whole. it, it lingers. It's still there.
So, in your upcoming role as president-elect for the West Virginia State Bar, how do you plan to address issues of diversity and inclusion within the state's legal community?
Well, that's a great question. The West Virginia State Bar is a little tied in the sense that I can't do anything at a legislative stance because the mandatory bars that have to remain apolitical. However, our Supreme Court luckily has stated that diversity is germane to the practice of law. Therefore, we are able to take positions and to move forward on endeavors that could increase diversity. My goal is to work more closely with, we have a really active minority lawyers committee, which puts on fabulous CLEs, continuing legal education seminars every year, and is really great with communication with kind of the officers and executive committee of the State Bar. My goal is to work more closely with the Minority Lawyers Committee and with other diverse members of our legal community to see what can be done. What do we need to do to increase diversity? And step one is, finding diverse members of the law school community and keep them here. And that's really important, is keeping them here, because we have increased diversity at our one and only law school in the state. The problem is they're not staying in West Virginia. They're going elsewhere to Pittsburgh, which is from where I am. Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania is just a quick short drive up the interstate. We're only about 5 miles from the Pennsylvania line. Or they're going to DC, which is also very close to us. And so just keeping them in our state it's a struggle, and I'm not sure what the answer is, but working with the Minority Lawyers Committee, working with the dean and certain administration and faculty at the College of Law, which is our only law school, and working with the vice president of diversity, equity, and inclusion at West Virginia University, who actually is a past president of the West Virginia State Bar, and creating a bit of a working group to see what we can do to move us forward.
Yeah. It sounds like that retention piece is what's missing, some kind of an incentive to make sure that the talent doesn't leave the state. So energy law is a field that has specific impact on various communities. How do you ensure that diverse perspectives are considered in your practice?
Well, and my practice specifically usually deals with land mineral owners. So early on when I started, my practice was with energy companies. And so there's no diversity there. Now it's more with mineral owners, which I do encounter more diverse owners from time to time. So let me back up a little bit. Typically what happens is, especially in West Virginia, land that's been owned by families for, decades or centuries, specifically the minerals, and that could be oil or gas or coal, tend to just kind of exist, and they get inherited because people die without wills or with wills. And, suddenly we now have 200 owners owning maybe 100-acre tract of oil and gas. And so they've been approached by a company who wants to negotiate with them. What I've seen is when these companies come in and they know that they're dealing with, and especially in the elderly population, and oftentimes diverse owners, I've seen that their offers are significantly lower than when they're dealing with, more middle-aged men specifically. And so that's when I come in and take it and I negotiate on behalf of the owners, specifically for what the market rate actually is going for. And I try to help overcome these biases, implicit or not, from the companies lowballing the diverse and the elderly mineral owners.
That's awesome. Now, the other question I have for you is, can you discuss the importance of mentorship in fostering diversity in the legal profession? And have you been involved and how you've been involved in being a mentor?
Yes, I think mentorship is the most important thing because that's how we get the retention part. And I think the mentorship has to start for these folks when they're in law school. The West Virginia State Bar, have a young lawyer section and their own executive committee who works closely with the law school, and I'm going to continue that role. So I was actually chair of that committee years ago, and so I know how it works, but I currently live and work in the same town as the law school. And so getting in there, getting known to these folks who may be diverse in whatever area that they are, and starting that mentorship early. And the mentorship, I think, for us is about kind of showing off our state, right? Showing why it's just as great to stay here as if you want to go to DC, or if you want to go to Pittsburgh, or if you want to go to Maryland or Virginia or any of the other states surrounding us, and why we are such a great state and why it's so important to stay here. But catching them early in law school and kind of getting them to fall in love with the area and with the state and with the people, and showing that, hey, not everyone in the practice of law is, a misogynist or a racist or whatever that may be, and kind of just holding on to them. And then when they graduate, hopefully that connection is still there and you can continue that mentorship, because if people don't have a connection to your area, they're not going to stay. Why would they?
No, they wouldn't. So what advice would you give to young aspiring lawyers from underrepresented backgrounds looking to enter into the field of defense litigation or energy law?
I would say, really, when you're in law school, I think the most important thing to do is to get involved. Don't just go to class. Don't just keep your head down. I mean, obviously you want those grades and you want to try to get into a good firm later, but getting involved is how you get to know people. Join the organizations, there's a minority law students organization. There's a women in the profession organization at the law school. And I would bet most law schools have something similar. Join the Alternative Dispute Resolution Society or organization at your law school, and most law schools have that as well. Join moot court or law review, something that allows you to have those networking events that bring in alumni, that bring in people from the community. Because when you do that, you're able to make those connections and get to know the people. In fact, that's how I got my job. I didn't know anyone in West Virginia. I came from my mom was a career secretary. My dad was a welder at he was a ship fitter. He was a welder at basically a shipyard. I knew no one in the state, and I just joined everything, and I started to get to know people. And once it came time to get a job, I had formed an organization at the law school kind of as part of a class project, but it caught the attention of a couple of, local lawyers. And when it came time to get a job, I got a phone call and said, hey, do you want to come work with us? And I'm still here. I'm an equity member now. So getting involved and just talking to people, it's so important. Yeah. And hopefully if people are able to get those mentors, then the mentors will be the ones who can help them network and get to know people and get out there.
I love it. I could talk to you forever, Shannon. This is absolutely awesome that we managed to get you to come onto our podcast. Thank you so much for all of your knowledge.
Thank you so much for having me. Yes.
It's an absolute pleasure. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in today. The Diversity Connector is bringing you inspiring individuals from all over the world. So tune in again tomorrow when I interview yet another amazing guest. In the meantime, have a fantastic day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world. And bye for now. Thanks again, Shannon.
Thank you.
And that's a wrap, everybody, on today's episode of the Diversity Connector podcast. Thank you for tuning in and being part of our vibrant and global conversation. I'm your host, Gertrude Mache, and it's been an honor to share this space with you. where voices from all walks of life come together to weave a tapestry of diverse perspectives. Remember, every story you've heard today is a thread in the larger fabric of our shared humanity. So, as you step back into your world, carry these stories with you and let them inspire you to embrace and celebrate the rich diversity around us. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review our podcast to help us share these inspiring stories with more listeners. Do follow us on social media by looking for the Diversity Connector podcast for more updates. Until then, keep connecting, keep listening, and keep celebrating the beauty of diversity. This is the Diversity Connector podcast signing off. Stay curious, stay open,